right, our next presentation is going to be on tailings, reprocessing, the project at Golden Sunlight. Richard Dyer is going to give us this presentation. He's the operations general supervisor at Barrick's Golden Sunlight mine. During his 32-year mining career, he's held various operational and maintenance roles, primarily at Nevada Gold Mines' Carlin mine. His experience has been instrumental in the startup of the tailings reprocessing plant at Golden Sunlight, and he's happy to call Montana his new home. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. So a little bit about Golden Sunlight today. A little bit of back history on it. Golden Sunlight is located in southwestern Montana, about halfway between Butte and Bozeman. The area that would become Golden Sunlight was purchased by Placer Dome back in 1968. And after many years of test work, development, construction, all that good stuff, the first ore was mined out of the Mineral Hill open pit in 1982 and processed shortly thereafter in 1983. 3 underground phases were successfully completed between 2002 and 2015. Interrupted only by the inheritance of Golden Sunlight by Barrick when Barrick bought out Placer Dome. In 2019, Golden Sunlight went into closure as it was no longer economically viable. However, the test work to start the tails reprocessing actually started back in 2010. And then in 2020, the tails reprocessing project came to fruition. So, to understand the tails reprocessing, first we need to understand what's in the tailings actually. And to do that, we needed to understand the original process flow that contributed to the tailings. This right here is a shortened version of the process that they used ever since 1982. The primary gold-bearing ore that was processed at Golden Sunlight was hard rock gold-bearing pyrite. The hard rock was crushed in 3 phases of crushing and 2 phases of grinding before ending the primary leach circuit. There, the product of the circuit was size classified several times. The first was being in the wash circuit right here, which is basically just big cyclones. The lighter material went on to the the leach circuit. The heavy material went down to the gravity spirals, where the middlings of it was either separated either back into the leach circuit or it was shipped off to tails. The sands that came off the gravity spirals went into a ball mill and into a pyrite leach, and then it was pumped back into the circuit. Excuse me. So anyway, after it goes through the pyrite leach circuit, then it goes through another thickener, and then it's separated. The lighter material goes over to the series of carbon columns, and then through another series of CIP tanks. The gold-bearing carbon was actually processed through a traditional elution circuit, where it was stripped and all the gold was actually poured on site. Over the 37 years that Golden Sunlight was in operation, it produced a little over 3 million troy ounces of gold. So in 2019, excuse me, Golden Sunlight went into closure. It's primarily because of the gold grade, the gold grade that was easily accessible through the open pit and the underground phases no longer paid for processing the gold. Gold veins were also copper rich, which further complicated the economics for processing. So, like any good mine, Golden Sunlight had a closure plan and perpetual water treatment. So over the course of the 37 years, Golden Sunlight created 2 tailings impoundments, TSF1 and TSF2. TSF1 was contributed from 1982 to 1986. And I think we can all appreciate that the tailings impoundment regulations back in the 80s was quite a bit different than it is now. So TSF1 is primarily unlined, but it did have a thin clay lining in it. And if you remember, the original process, Golden Sunlight, processed hard rock, gold-bearing pyrite. And traditional cyanide leaching does not leach out sulfides out of that. And instead, they're rejected in tails. So the sulfides potentially, over time, turn into acid. So now we're only going to be perpetually treating water. We're going to be perpetually treating acidic water, which is not environmentally or economically sound to do. So what did we do? We built a plant. So the original process design, we started out, we take the tailings we dig up the tailings, we run it through a feed hopper, and then through a nice fancy piece of equipment called a delumper and a repulper. From there is pumped 500 vertical feet and about 5,000 linear feet uphill back up to the mill, back into the flotation process. From there, the product off of the free roughers goes through a polishing mill and then is pumped to another thickener and then over to 2 sets of cleaner cells as well. And then the product off of that goes into another thickener and then over to a nice fancy state-of-the-art filter press that we bought just special for this, which works fantastic, by the way. That's a little sarcasm. The tailings rejected off of the rougher cells, which is a benign product, goes to another tailings thickener, which then is discharged into the open pit. For the most part, in theory, it worked pretty good. So, commissioning and startup of new plants are often problematic, and this one was no different. The team ran into multiple issues, but I'd like to highlight a few in particular. The first 2 are captured with one incorrect assumption, that tailings material was homogeneous. This is not the case. TSF2 was completely reclaimed with grass, had roads going through it, and all of that fun stuff by the time we were ready to start reprocessing. The road base, unfortunately, got down into the tailings material, which made its way into the new tails reprocessing plant. The plant, of course, wasn't designed to handle any rock at all, so the first bit of rock within the first hour stopped the repulper dead. Change this. Oh, there. Oop. Nope. I need this to move. Yeah, it's okay. Just give me both remotes. I can handle it. So anyway, where was I? So yeah, it's not the design handling the rocks, which stopped the repulper dead in its tracks. The other issue was the assumption that the particle size would be about the same throughout the entire impoundment. This also was not the case. The first material that we attempted to feed through the plant was greater than 400 microns, and this material doesn't float very well at all. We tried. I mean, very, very many sand beaches in the basement down here. Also, the third issue also arises at the repulper, was a lack of surge between the loader and flotation. So if you remember back, the loader feeds directly into the repulper, and that pumps directly to the float plant. So every time the loader has to stop, the loader operator has to go through shift change, have lunch, go to the bathroom, all those fun things like that. Every time he stopped, the feed would stop coming to the plant. So the density would drop from, it would fluctuate between either 0% solids or 40% solids, which is not ideal for float. Float likes a nice, consistent, steady flow throughout the entire day. The last major issue was our pit thickener, which is basically a tails thickener, but we call it a pit thickener because it discharges into our open pit. And because of the Berkeley pit, we made an agreement with the state of Montana that we would not have a large liquid pool in the open pit. Which means we needed to control and maximize the density of the material that discharged into the pit thickener, or out of the pit thickener. However, the installed controls was a pinch valve and a gravity feed line, which is very, very hard to do, especially during startup. We walked a thin line between sanding the line in and emptying the entire thickener out every time we tried to run it, which is not very sustainable at all. So what we did, we were able to fix quite a few of these things very, very quickly. To solve the repulper issue with the rock, we actually brought in a screening plant to help scalp off all of the oversized rock material, which worked, but it's also a double-edged sword though, because a lot of the clay agglomerates, or the agglomerates that are in the tailings, are about the same size as the rock, so we were losing a lot of those materials as well. But it increased the rehandle, but it did solve the rock problem for now. We're still working on a more permanent fix for that, and I'll get to that more here in a couple more slides. The large particles was a little bit trickier though. So what we did is we ended up moving the mill, not physically of course, but we changed the flow going into the mill, and put an old thickener back into service. So we now feed from the repulper, which feeds into a thickener, creates a surge for us. It does two things. It also creates a surge so we no longer feel the effect when the loader's up and down, and it thickens the ore to feed into the mill, which gives us a better grinding efficiency out of it. And the last solution was actually the easiest, was down here on the pit thickener. We installed an underflow pump and a control valve on that. And so we can control the density and maximize the density and the percent solids that are actually being discharged out into the pit. A lot easier that way. So when the thickener reaches a certain density, the pump kicks on, the valve opens up, it discharges into the pit. When the density is low enough, the valve shuts, and it actually recirculates back into itself, just to keep things going, to keep things flowing, until the proper density is reached again. We actually added recirc lines into all of the thickeners here at Golden Sunlight, which has actually helped us out quite a bit during startup and shutdown, because during the startup process, it's been a lot of up and down, up and down, up and down, and it keeps things moving and keeps the density right where we need it to be. So this is just a quick overview of it. This down here is a TSF1 facility that we're actually mining out of. That gets pumped up to the flotation plant, and then the cons that we want go into a con storage barn here. The tailings flow goes all the way through to our pit thickener. We thicken it up, and then we discharge it down into our final tailings, which is backfilling our pit. As you can see, we kind of shaded the area out, so this would be the final elevation once we're done reclaiming that tails pond. So there'll be it doesn't quite fill the pit all the way up, so it leaves us plenty of room in there, so there's no chance for it to overflow at all. And also, to go with that, it significantly reduces the water treatment requirement from about hundreds of gallons a minute of water treatment to about less than 5. It's important to remember that at the end of the day, this is just a closure plant is what this is. So, by removing all of the sulfides out of the ore, which is the main goal, which it keeps the surrounding community safe and significantly reduces the perpetual water treatment we're going to have to do in the future. So, Golden Sunlight, we have been successfully making sulfide concentrate and sending it to Nevada since July of 2022. Unfortunately, it's only been at partial capacity. But the major bottleneck is still is the repulper circuit. The repulper itself is a one-off piece of equipment. It was actually fabricated right here in Anaconda. Why it's quite unique. It isn't quite robust as it needs to be, and spares are difficult to get when only one fabricator knows how to make them. So we're looking into a sister industry, the aggregate industry, for a more robust option to better incorporate agglomerates into and handle larger rock. This is called, sorry about that. There we go. So this piece of equipment we've actually looked into from the aggregate industry is called a log washer. It's used quite commonly in the quarries. Spares are easy to find. So this will be a huge upgrade and replacement for what we need to replace the repulper with. This project is ongoing and should be completed by the end of this year. Further bottlenecks that we've ran into so far is the increased surge capacity between the areas of the plant. We're looking at refurbishing a few of the old leach tanks and turning it into flotation feed storage tanks, and then as well as creating some concentrate storage tanks as well, so it can decouple the plant, and any of the downtime will not affect the plant in its entirety. So GSM, we're also has a strong connection to the Whitehall community, and we would not be able to succeed without their support. Restarting the Tailings reprocessing project has been a large benefit to them as well. We've been able to add 21 new jobs and counting to the area, which has made a big difference to them. Golden Sunlight, along with the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department, also managed 3,500 acres of block management land in the community that they use to recreate in. They can hunt, fish, camp, and much more on this land. And lastly, we've been able to partner with the community in building of a daycare center. With Barrick being the largest contributor to it, they actually named the building after us, so it's the Barrick Learning Center in town. So that'll benefit the community quite well as well. So, key takeaways. So Golden Sunlight is an important part of the Whitehall community and contributes to Montana's rich history. In those history books, we want to leave an environmentally safe and lasting legacy for years to come. And during this difficult time of startup, we have been challenged to stay agile and solve problems as they arise, which pushes us to continually improve and keep moving forward. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rich.
Oh.
Any questions for Rich?